What is up, everyone? This is me again, and this video was inspired by Franco from Franc Analysis. Okay, and he was talking about why Mike Figueredo from Humanist Report was cheering on the banning of Donnie Tiny Hands and what kind of unintended consequences this might have against leftists. And this made me want to go dig up Mike Figueredo's record. And here's what we found. And he tends to have a very hypocritical stance on a lot of things. So let's break it down. So, Hipster Mike. I call Mike Figueredo Hipster Mike because he's a hipster Portland. He's a Portland hipster. With the beard, the tattoos, you know what I'm saying? The glasses. Okay, so he's a Portland hipster. Here's his agenda. Okay, and he's college educated. Remember that college educated people largely tend to be imperialist because being imperialist benefits their bottom line. Okay, and he makes excuses for AOC. He told Jimmy to calm down on hashtag force the vote. He only made a couple different statements about hashtag force the vote, and he didn't really side with either faction, either side. He defended the hashtag fraud squad. He praises Bernie on moving left in his foreign policy when Bernie really hasn't moved left at all. He's just doing a publicity stunt. He was just doing a publicity stunt to attract new voters. And he hates on Jimmy Dore for showing his emotions. He actually thinks that AOC is different than Pelosi. What the heck? They're pretty much almost the same on foreign policy. And they're both corporate sellouts. And he criticized Franc Analysis and Jimmy Dore over force the vote. And he makes all kinds of excuses for the fraud squad. Okay? So let's talk about other areas where Hipster Mike has basically failed. So, praising Zionist settler Bernie Sanders for his mild milquetoast criticisms of the Zionist entity. And his support for Bernie, right? So those are a couple other issues I have with Mike Figueredo, other than what we just went through already on domestic policy. But here on foreign policy, praising Zionist settler Bernie Sanders. And the whole, he's improving, he's moving to the left, moving the Overton window. Well, you can't really move to the left in the Democratic Party. You don't change the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party changes you. You understand what I'm saying? You know, as much as you try within the Democratic Party to change it, you get co-opted, okay? So Bernie is a Zionist settler, and that's one of the many reasons why Mike Figueredo's support of Bernie Sanders is bad, okay? He has a record as a settler. In 1963, he lived on a Zionist settlement on ethnically cleansed Palestinian land. 2018, Bernie took 5K from J Street, making him his 35th largest donor. Bernie supports USA-backed, Zionist-funded Kurdish extremists in Syria. And Bernie supports the FSA, who are also funded by the Zionist entity, and using Raytheon-made weapons. So weapons that are funded and made by a U.S. weapons manufacturer. And Bernie also exploited, in his mild milquetoast critiques of Palestine, which were largely a publicity stunt, Bernie was trying to exploit imperialist sellouts in the diaspora in order to get votes. And I made a video on that this spring, detailing that he doesn't care about foreign policy. He just cares about your votes and your money. He's like a televangelist. And then Bernie's support for the invasion of Afghanistan is another reason why it was wrong for Mike Figueredo to support him. Bernie's support for funding the invasion of Iraq is another reason why Mike Figueredo was categorically wrong to support Bernie. Bernie's support of war crimes and invasion in Bosnia in the 90s, yet another reason why it was wrong for Mike Figueredo to support Bernie. And and then Mike Figueredo also talked about in false dichotomies about and false platitudes about a Shia versus Sunni conflict. There is no Shia versus Sunni conflict. It's a conflict of it's the anti-imperialists against the pro-imperialists. Because if you look at Azerbaijan, they're Shia. They're siding with Turkey, which are Sunni, and both of them are clients of the Zionist entity. Now you look at Iraq, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. Lebanon, majority Shia. Palestine, majority Sunni. Syria, majority Sunni, with the large Shia minority. Iraq, majority Shia. Iran, majority Shia. Okay? They're all allies. So that just debunks what Mike Figueredo was saying about Shia versus Sunni conflict. And he was saying this in reference to the 2019 debate for the 2020 presidential election in November 2019, where Bernie talked about bringing Saudi and Iran together and having the U.S. help negotiate. And U.S. negotiating anything regarding foreign policy, bad idea. We saw what Jimmy Carter did. Jimmy Carter forced Egypt to sell out to the Zionist entity. And yeah, by forcing Egypt to sell out to the Zionist entity, not only does Jimmy Carter solidify his place in history as one of the biggest villains and biggest Zionist grifters ever, he also solidifies his place in history as a war criminal. That and other things as well, but among other things, you know. And Mike Figueredo should know way better than this, because he is writing a book on LGBT people in West Asia and North Africa. And he's also college educated, and he's working on his PhD in political policy. So there's no excuse at this point for Mike Figueredo to be peddling in false dichotomies about a Shia versus Sunni conflict. Okay? There's no need for that. And Mike Figueredo, you know, he's part of Rose Emoji Twitter, right? He's part of the DSA, or is in some way, shape, or form affiliated with the DSA. And they're known Zionists, they're known liberal Zionists, they're known liberal imperialists. And for every positive thing that Figueredo says condemning imperialism, he supports a candidate, namely Bernie Sanders, and refuses to call out other politicians, namely AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar, that support imperialism and support genocide, and that regularly vote for policies enabling genocide, imperialism, and war crimes. That's why we're calling out Hipster Mike. That's why we're calling him out, because he made a video about drone strikes in Afghanistan, but his boy Bernie Sanders supported that invasion. Or he made a video about the great protest of return in Gaza. In Gaza, when people in Gaza protested against the Zionist entity stealing the land of Palestine and erecting a fence around Gaza, and the fact that protesters were murdered and mutilated when they were protesting the Zionist entity. and defending their homeland of Palestine, which also happens to be the homeland of my great-grandmother and my great-great-grandfather, you know. So he made a video about the Great March of Return, which is good, but then he praised Zionist war criminal Bernie Sanders, which is bad, you know. So he's more than a little hypocritical on foreign policy. I would liken him to like a Lib Dem kind of person. And he's not even good on domestic policy, because I was going to say he's good on single payer, but very mixed reviews from him on hashtag force the vote. And, you know, he doesn't think there's a difference between, he thinks there's a difference between the hashtag fraud squad and Nancy Pelosi, which really, come on now, there isn't. And he's kind of and he's definitely a hypocrite on foreign policy and an imperial, and he poses as a leftist to get clicks and to get views and likes and all that, but I don't think he's that progressive. I think he's a liberal Oregon Democrat with tattoos and hipster beard and glasses, and he wants to a certain extent maintain the status quo. And if you look at the playlist on his YouTube page, notice it says one of them is called Late Stage Capitalism. So he's pro-capitalist. He is pro-capitalist. Which is not surprising, especially if he's affiliated with DSA, which have a history of being anti-communist, which I can make a whole separate video about. But he's a hypocrite, man. He's a hypocrite, and I think he's being finally exposed by Steph Zamorano, by Franco from Franc Analysis, and by a bunch of other people for his hypocrisy, man. Because if you support Bernie, you cannot call yourself anti-imperialist. If you support any Democrat, you cannot call yourself anti-imperialist or anti-Zionist, because they're the ones enabling the Republicans committing war crimes. They're also committing war crimes. You know, it's not a left versus right thing. It's not a Democrat versus Republican thing. Because there is no two parties. There's one party. That's the corporate Zionist imperialist party. It's the people versus the oligarchs. That's what it is. And the people support socialism. The people support communism. And then you have these petty bourgeoisie grifters like Mike Figueredo and Anna Kasparian. And all they do is grift, grift, grift. And they don't care about the ordinary people like us. And why is that? Because they're paid not to care. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Figueredo took some Katzenberg money from TYT and then ran with it to do his book on LGBT people in West Asia and North Africa. Wouldn't be surprised. You know, it's a theory. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I don't know. But hipster Mike Figueredo is really revealing himself and really exposing himself as a hypocrite, a sellout, and a fraud. So he really revealed himself. And I think people are waking up. Franco woke up to the reality, to what I've been saying for a couple years now. Other people are waking up. And they're going to wake up. And now they know Mike Figueredo, not our ally. We can't trust him. We can't count on him. Because when it's time to push back against the establishment, he's off campaigning for Bernie and shilling for Bernie, who's an imperialist and a Zionist and supports war crimes and supports genocide. So, like I said, Mike Figueredo, not trustworthy. Franco from Franco's Analysis, he's trustworthy. So that says something. That says something about the left. And Mike Figueredo, like Bernie Sanders, like DSA, he's not left. He is center-right. So very revealing information about Mike Figueredo. And Again, his honesty and his integrity largely compromised because he's a hypocrite, because he's a sellout. And that's true. And if you don't like the truth, then too bad, dude. Too bad, you know, because this is the truth and I will tell the truth. And that is all for today. Hope you like this video. Like, subscribe. I'll be back later for another good video. Peace.